this is really saying something about team-based learning, but I wouldn't write this. My syllabus is 45 pages long, typically. This is 4 pages, and this is not terribly clear, right? But the basic idea is there's 3 major performance areas: individual performance, team performance, and then your team contribution effort, individual team contribution effort, right? And he's actually put down some criteria here saying that on how this is all working, but essentially the allocation of the weighting of the percentage of the course marks across those 3 areas is decided by the students. They decide how much of the course goes to individual performance, how much goes to team performance, and what weighting should there be on the peer contribution. And it says the percentage of the grade determined by scores in each of those 3 areas will be determined by representatives of student teams in the first class period. Then they will also decide on the relative weighting of the individual in the first work between the individual readiness assurance test and the final exam. They'll decide that weighting. Now I do this differently because I want my exam, my individual exam will never be less than 60% of the course grade. So essentially what I have is 60% is the exam, and there's 40% to allocate across these other areas. So I do it differently. The point about this exercise is it's just a little quiz on here. That's it, to give you an example of how it works, okay? But if I just go through the answers for you, and then you could add up your individual score and team score. So in question 1, you will be given time for what? You're given class time for working on each of the graded team assignments, okay? I got 1A, right? Yeah. 2A, yeah. 3C, because in the peer evaluation, I'm forcing students to discriminate amongst team members. They say, I can't decide. I say, you've got to have a minimum performance difference between each group of, say, 10 percentage points or something. So it's 1A, 2A, 3C, 4B, 5A, 6B, 7B, 8D, 9A, 10C, and 11E. E. Okay. Now some of them are ambiguous. We won't go through all that, right? But you know, the main point I want to get at is this, right? Let's just go through. Okay, so Team Alpha here. What was your team score? Sorry? 8. Okay. Bravo at the back. Hello at the back. What was your team score? Sorry? Sorry? 8. 8. Was it 8? What was your team score, Mark? 5. 5? 5? Oh my God. And Team Charlie, what was your team answer? Team score?
9.
9. Okay. 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 Let's look at the teams. What was your team score? Sorry?
Number 11. It's D.
No, what was your team score out of 11?
11 number D.
11, number 11 is E. Oh, sorry. It's 11 is going to be D, it's D, sorry, 11D. 11D, yeah. $11D. Yeah, sorry. So how did you, what was your team score? Sorry? 5. Sorry? 5. Okay. And what was your team score? 7. 6. That's not good team working. 6.5. There's a negotiation going on here. 7. Take the higher one, right? You can do, but we got prayer time in 10 minutes. Normally you can do. The answer is yes, not 7. Okay, and right at the back, Foxtrot, how would you get on? What was your team score? What was your... No, what was the team score? Team one. 7. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Now, quickly, in Team Alpha, how many of you individually got more than 8? None. Bravo, how many of you individually got more than 5? 2. Okay. Charlie, how many of you individually got more than 9? None. Delta, how many of you individually got more than 5? No. Echo, how many of you got more than 7 individually? And how many of you got more than 7 individually?
All of us. More than 7. Individual score.
So, okay, so we were very clear. So the team score is 7,
7.
but individually, everybody got more than 7.
Individually, everybody got more than 7.
Well, that is unprecedented. That must go in the Guinness Book of Records. I've never had that before. Okay, this is totally weird. This is the most destructive team working I've ever seen in my life or read.
Scores in different individual sheets, not the same question. I've got, for example, 5 answers wrong, but he's got 5 answers wrong, but different questions.
This is, okay. But you can see that we need to work out what's gone on there. There's something strange. But down here, this is the more normal situation, okay, from the team working, okay. Let's have a break now because it's prayer time in about 8 minutes, all right? So, and we'll come back at, let's come back at 12:05. Is that okay? So let me restart. We have just done a little exercise here of taking an individual multiple choice question test, retaking it, and except for really quite an extraordinary anomaly here, the team results are generally better than the individual results. Normally now in a class I would ask if anyone has any appeals in conventional team-based learning. We could then deal with appeals, but I actually do that online. So what I do is I say if any team feels that the question was ambiguous or the reading material was ambiguous, I post online a form. I say fill out the form with your argument, send it to me, I will review it, post up online, review and answer back online so everybody sees it. I'll show you what I do. So I'm varying the team-based learning process sort of slightly. So let's just go through this some of the issues here we have.
Excuse me. Sorry, you are not Arif. Can you please increase the volume?
Is that a little better? Okay, thank you. Let me just go through some of some of the elements a little bit here to explain to you. First of all, in forming teams, let me not try and get this video up on team formation, but I talked a little bit about team formation. Key things are 3 important metrics. Number 1, never use student-selected teams. 3 rules. Number 1, never use student-selected teams. Number 2, make the teams as diverse as possible in the way that I've suggested. And then thirdly, make the selection process transparent. No one can say, well, this was done secretly. It's all open in the class. Everyone can see how the team is set up. There's no room for disagreement. Teams should be generally between 5 and 7 students. Team development begins to fail at more than 7. So between 5 and 7 students. So what I do is I decide my sorting criteria. I prioritize my sorting criteria. Have you studied economics before? Have you studied strategy before? Do you speak Mandarin? I prioritize the criteria. I then get the students ready. I call out my first criteria, they line up. Second criteria, they line up. And I go around and then I count off to get groups of between 5 and 7. So 150 students. As I said, I'll have about maybe 26 groups. I like 26 because I can go A, B, C, D to Z. That's 26 groups. That's quite good. But then each group will, I suggest each group gets together in the classroom, they introduce each other, and then I ask them to elect a team leader. They must decide a team leader. And the team leader is someone who I have most contact with. So if there's team issues, the team leader writes to me. So this is the 3 principles I put up for team formation. Questions on forming teams, which I've put through here. This is an example graphically. You are all sitting around here. I've called out my first criteria here. Then I've got my second criteria here, my third criteria, my fourth criteria. This is the final selection here, criteria. Sometimes at the end, people just say, anyone that's left over toward the end. Yes?
What could we go wrong with the student-selected teams?
Sorry?
What is wrong with the student-selected teams?
Oh, that's easy. Because if I say student-selected teams, guess what happens? All the Indian students form one group, all the Chinese students form one group, or all the very best students get together, right? And you're left with these you're left with a set of very homogeneous groups with intra-group, you've got intra-group homogeneity and inter-group heterogeneity. I want the groups to be balanced and equal, and that means the diversity must occur within each group. I want, in group A, one Chinese student, one Chinese student, one Chinese. I do not want them all together. They're learning from each other. They're developing also bicultural capabilities at working with people within different cultures. That's part. People have different perspectives. Some people think more conceptually, a lot of Chinese are more analytically. Chinese find it very difficult to cope with ambiguity. Chinese students will say, but what is the right answer? They're great with accounting, it's 4.86, but in many subjects areas where you're diagnosing things, there isn't an answer. And I have to say, well, there isn't an answer. I'm looking for my answer. What I want is a good argument from you? What's a good argument? What's a set of reasons and a conclusion you come to? And it may be different, and they don't understand it. So that's a Chinese culture. The American culture is quite different. So I want people mixed up in this way. Yeah.
In group 4, could we depend on student GPA?
Sorry?
Could we depend on student GPA?
Yes, the question is, could you do it by student GPA? The answer is, it's difficult to do that, and probably you get into a problem, because if you say, could everybody with a GPA of 4.75 line up, right? Well, this is private information, and some people may be embarrassed to reveal that, and it's unfair to ask people that. And then who's left? Like then you say, well, people with GPA of 2 at the end. I mean, it's not nice to do that in a class. It's discriminatory, I think. It's, you know, I don't think, so you've got to get it another way. What's another way you could get at that same question without asking it directly? Is there an indirect way of getting at it? So think that through. But coming up with your criteria is important, okay? And so then I'm going round here and I'm counting group, you know, here there's 4 teams, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the diverse teams are getting together in that way, okay? So this is explains a little bit how this is done. Okay. Let me not try and get the video up here. And then typically I begin by trying to get students to understand the overall course objectives, which is about ensuring students master the subject matter, prepare them to be lifelong learners, to develop their interpersonal and team interaction skills, and have students enjoy the course. So I explain to them clearly what the outcomes from the course are. It's not about someone memorizing, getting a 100% exam. The objectives from this are quite, so I explain very clearly what we're trying to achieve in the course outcomes are. And typically, I give students an orientation package. I give them maybe the article, a general syllabus block, something about what employers are looking for in students. I can go online to the graduate student recruitment body organization and get the surveys and give them that, say this is what the employers are looking for. And that's why, so I'm trying to justify and explain why I'm doing this. I give them some examples and so they can see what's going on. Setting grade weights. This is where each team has to allocate, each team within a team has to recommend as a team the weighting of different elements of the course, as on page 3 of the syllabus here. Each team has to decide a weighting, the proportion across each group. Now I do it a little bit differently. There are criteria which are set up, such as on here, that each major performance area must be at least 10% of the final. One of my criteria is the individual exam will be 60%. It can be 70%. And then I've got different elements where students can decide the grade weighting, but I do say that each of those elements must have a minimum to them, and then they come up with a proposal, they come up with various proposals. So each team, I get 26 proposals in for grade weighting across different areas. I then put them into groups, reduce that down to maybe 5 or 6, and then I put them up online, in my case, and I get students to vote. Everybody votes on which set of grade weights they prefer. So the students individually, and then the one that gets the most votes wins. So the students are then deciding the distribution of the grades across the different performance areas. Subject to my minimum criteria, the exam will be 60%, and each performance area must be at least 10% of balance, something like that. But students are deciding that. They're having to decide how much of the weighting should be on an individual test, for example, and how much should be on a team test. how much weighting should be on the peer evaluation of your team performance. At the end of the course, there's a team performance evaluation. Everyone in your team is asked, how did you do? People around here are asked and I do this in a very particular way. I combine methodologies and I ask for narrative and I guide students that all feedback must be constructive. There's always a way of writing things constructively. Instead of saying someone never talks, you could say something like, this person should try and learn how to express themselves. So you can always, everything can be told in a positive way. I do not take negative comments or pass those on. I also give students the option to not receive feedback. There are always students that have got health issues, mental health issues, for example. And I always give a student the option to elect or vote not to receive written feedback. They may get their team evaluation, they'll get their score, but they will not then get the comments back. And that's important because some students, as I said, may not be well prepared to receive feedback, however constructive it's worded. Okay. That's grade weighting. Teams, as I said, will suggest preliminary weights, grade weights, and then I set minimum criteria. Here, a minimum of 10% must be assigned to each major performance area. So you can come up with that as you want. And then team maintenance is about the what is the performance of each team member towards, for example, you could have a team member that contributes a lot to the knowledge part, but is really disruptive in the team performance. So think about the kind of questions that will go on a peer evaluation form for students about how they work in a team. There's different examples of how to do this. The key is to force students to differentiate amongst each other and to avoid collusion. So I occasionally get, out of 26 teams, I might get one set of team evaluations back where there's clear collusion. I can see that. But I give them, say, for example, a team of 6, I might give 50 marks, and I might say you have to allocate this 50 amongst the 5 other people, and you must not give anyone the same score, or you must have at least a gap between the highest and low of at least 3 marks or something like that. So there's ways of forcing dispersion. I won't go to, but the key is that you're giving people marks to allocate across team members, and you're requiring that they cannot give, for example, the same score to different team members. They've got to evaluate and assess differently. Now, sometimes I've had teams that have done very well come to me and say, we can't do this because we have been great. We have all contributed equally. We cannot work out a way to help us out. And then, as an exception, I will allow them to have the same score as an exception. But I don't publish that in advance. That sometimes happens. So a little bit of flexibility there. So let me not go through here. Again, we talked about this. The first class meeting of each module is a readiness assurance test. There's an individual test for a 2-week module that's retaken as a team test. If I've got 2 50-minute classes, I'll spread that across 2 classes. So I've got 50 minutes, 50 minutes. I'll do the individual test, then I'll do the team retest. And of course, one of the issues then is that students go out of the class can look up the answers and things. So I might do it slightly differently. I might do a slightly different team test. I might change it a bit. So they've got an individual test, then I do a team test that's a little bit different. There's ways you can innovate and adapt this, okay, to work within the university. So we talked about the scratch cards. and then they move on to the next question. One issue that arose in the break, someone said, well, do you play music every class, loud music? And I actually, no. I mean, when the students are doing individual tests, there's sort of no music. When students are working on the application exercises, it's sort of, maybe some mild music, right? And I always tell people, email me, and it's anonymous if you're not happy, and we will just turn it off or turn it down. But when they're doing the team retake of the tests, they're having great fun. They just want loud music. So this only happens occasionally. This was not normal. Right? And you don't have to have music at all, right? It's not like that every class. Only when you've got a team retake does it tend to be a little bit more boisterous, and people are scratching cards and jumping up and down and things. So that's what's going on. Okay. Multiple choice question writing. There's lots written about this. I have a folder of articles on this. Typically, I write the questions about 1/3 Bloom's level of knowledge, a recall, and 2/3 simple application. So rarely do I ask a simple memorization. Everything's at least understanding, and maybe 2/3 application in each multiple choice question test. Right? So here's just an example. There's a STEM and there's options, right? And there's lots on how to write good multiple choice questions written on this, right? Some textbooks have instructor resources that have questions in. The issue there is we always assume the students have all that already, have managed to get that. So what I sometimes do is take those questions and quietly twist them around so the answer's different, right? So I kind of catch them out if they've actually got the resources, right? So there's a STEM and there's options, and they make a choice.